Yesterday I made a mistake. I think I said it twice before I got to it. And
Yes, such a big agenda.
But every item is important.
I know, it's good. It's all for today.
I don't have any notes. Oh, this is my traffic study, Purposeville Road.
Hello?
It's been a good
Hello?
process.
You just said let's go.
I'm in.
Okay.
Yeah, staff's going to want to hear
Larson's still
some feedback from us on that.
Okay, no worries.
There are, I guess, a couple of questions how to go, and they want to get some thoughts from us.
The camera's not.
Video's not working here.
Oh, he said it was. He said the video's not working there.
Sean.
He said just go, please. Thanks.
Good afternoon and welcome to the February meeting of the Public Works Committee. Call to order. We have a full contingent here. Today we'll be covering both consent agenda and general agenda items. We'll be doing a voice vote on our consent items. Does anyone have an item that they would like to have pulled from the consent agenda? I'm going to pull C2. If we could have a motion to approve the balance, I'd appreciate it.
So we'll move second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Clerk, if we could have C2 read to us, please.
Item C2, resolution approving an agreement with the Official Village Homeowners Association for decorative street lighting, Southeast Ward.
Great. The reason I wanted to pull this is because we see these on a fairly regular basis, and when we do, we always approve them. There tends to be no argumentation. There's no representation from communities. This is truly something that I think can be handled at a staff level, and I'd like to hear my fellow committee members' opinion on that, on whether they feel like this is necessary to have council approval when it is traditionally just something that is a rubber stamp.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, Councilmember Larson.
I think there's some advantage to bringing it forward to council just so people understand the process and to understand also that this is not a standard policy of the city. If we put it in the staff's hands, I'm afraid people are going to think that they have the authority to make that decision and going to put pressure on them to go ahead and approve things. Here it has it's a special condition that's being imposed on the people that are paying for it. And I think we ought to just leave it as this. It doesn't take long to make the approval. We make the approval in 30 seconds or whatever. So I suggest we leave it the way it is.
In 10 years, I can't think of one that has been controversial.
No, I don't think it's a matter of controversy. I just think it's a lot of people like to have special lighting, and they don't understand the process. They don't understand there is a process. They'll see some neighborhood get special lighing, and they'll say, "Oh, why don't we get that?" And then they come back to staff. And
Have you had those comments? I have not had those comments.
I've had several neighborhoods that have asked for special lighting.
Okay. Well, all right.
I mean, I'm one of four here, so yeah.
Yep. All right. If I get a motion to approve, and if not,
Did you want more comments?
sorry. Additional comments? Questions?
I think that there are some things, because we don't get feedback, doesn't necessarily mean that they should be rubber stamped. I think people presume that the city does a lot of things independent of residents' input. It's very much like traffic calming. We just almost automatically approve all traffic calming requests, but it's initiated by the residents. And unless we're going to say we're just going to take these things over and implement them for everybody without any special regard, I would think that it needs to still come before us as special items that people are requesting. Otherwise, people will say that, why didn't I get any? Why can we just go through and the whole city, the city does this. The city doesn't do this independent of just because we think it's nice. I think decorative lighting would look lovely all over the city. So if we want to make that a policy, then yes, we wouldn't need people to request it. So I just think that's one of those things that when you look you don't always have to get negative feedback or opposition for some things. That I think the public needs to know, if they are the ones who initiate it, then we should then adopt it for them as a council.
Can I get a perspective from staff? I mean, just walk us through how these things come to us and what the process is for them to get in front of us.
Yep. Good evening, Chair McIntosh and committee members. So this actually came up probably about 2 years ago. We meet with the development community on a regular basis, and they actually approached staff about this and said, hey, when we do this in High Point, Greensboro, this is a staff approval. You guys are kind of out in left field as far as how you handle this and sending that all the way up through a formal review process for city council approval. Would you guys consider dropping this back to a staff level approval like we do in the rest of the triad? And when we started thinking about what was asked, it did make a lot of sense as long as there are clear metrics and policies that everybody has to meet, and those are explained ahead of time, that there's really not a lot of discretion in this policy. And so that's why staff believed it was a good candidate. And frankly, what we can do is pull some of that staff time back that will be spent on preparing these items to bring to council and reallocate it to other tasks. So from a staff standpoint, there's not a lot of discretion in these. The other issue that's at play on a lot of these is, mostly these, when you see these are new communities that are being built. There's probably not a lot of residents living in these. These are requested by the developer during the early construction phases of the project. So it's not necessarily citizens in the neighborhood that are asking for these. It's a lot of times it's the developer on the front end in the early stages of construction that's asking to do this as an enhancement to the community they're trying to market.
Councilmember Burke.
Thank you. ACM King, how much staff time is spent on preparing these items to bring before council?
Jeff or Reed may be able to better answer that than I am. They're probably closer to that than I am.
Thanks, Aaron. Good afternoon, Chair McIntosh, members of the committee. I would say, on average, preparing the council items alone, 4 to 5 hours. A lot of times it's in my office and we have one other staff person. Outside of that, it's looking at these photometric layouts, a lighting layout that we received from Duke Energy, and collaboration between that. With the addition of the council item, it adds about that, whatever the cycle where we're at between public works and full adoption with council, 4 to 6 weeks. So that's kind of what we're looking at, but just staff time alone, a couple hours to prepare the items and do that work to get it to this point.
A couple of hours to prepare the item. Let's say if we did not bring it before council, if it's approved on the staff level, how much time is invested?
If we didn't bring it here?
Yes.
So if we don't bring it here, it's a matter of working with the developer. Each development is different. If we're talking about a large development, a lot of, like Brookberry Farms, for example, when it's 10, 12 phases, we're talking about a lot of staff time. If it's a one-phase development with 5 to 10 lights, not as much staff time. It requires us to go out in the field and look at all these things. So there's the work on the back end that we're still going to do. It's just a matter of not presenting it to the council, the committee formally.
And so the time that you just mentioned as far as bringing it before council did not include the amount of time on the back end. You didn't calculate that into the total amount of time to get it ready for council, or did you?
So getting it ready for council, what I'm considering that is to prepare all the documentation and the papers. All the contracts that you will see, they're still being prepared. It's really, I'm thinking of the CARFs and the resolutions and things of that nature. That's the staff time that I'm thinking of when I'm standing up here talking to y'all. Outside of that, we still will have all that back end work.
So now we're talking about the CARFs and whatever presentation, and you're saying that takes about 4 or 5 hours?
For each specific development, at least. And if there's like Brookberry Farms, when there's 12 phases, it's that times 12 for each phase that comes along.
Well, I'm going to agree with the other two council members up here. I have not been made aware that it was an issue, and if this saves a step, if it's just a step that it saves, I think that from what I hear from citizens, they're always comparing one side of town with another side of town, and they don't really understand the processes that have to be followed in order to get the decorative lighting or other maybe enhancements that we have throughout our community. And I think it's good to put these items on the agenda so that they do understand there is a process that has to be followed no matter where the location exists.
Mayor Pro Tem?
Yes, good afternoon. I believe that any time those that have worked with me the past 14, 15 years, any time that we can make our services more efficient, any time that we can help staff to be able to do their job efficiently without having to be redundant, without having to keep coming back, without having to spend unnecessary hours doing work, that if we just took a couple of steps out, much like what we're doing, your department in reviewing the ordinances, ACM King, that was not well received back in the day in 09 and 10 when I told them that we need to get better with this. Again, we keep hearing how developers and others will tell people and others when they leave us or trying to work with us that we're a little difficult to work with. And I hear it. I heard it just last week. So I am a supporter of anything that alleviates a unnecessary critical step. It's not critical, unnecessary, and it's not critical. I'm all for taking that out, and let's keep it moving.
Councilmember Scipio.
One thing I don't have a problem with is when the development is being developed and you're working with developers, you're saying, and you have to bring it to us for approval. But if it's a new development that's going to have decorative lighting, I don't think that needs to come to us because it's brand new. But this one is with existing neighborhoods and existing associations. So when I think when we look at how do we streamline, I think we look at how many are requested from developers, brand new neighborhoods versus those that are established neighborhoods. I'm not sure if we're saying the same thing. I think the policy procedure is probably the same. But I think if it's an established neighborhood and people want something coming to them, we need to look at it differently than if it's built to look a certain way.
Definitely, great point. So this one specifically, this is a new neighborhood association. So it's kind of, I'll dig a little bit into the street lighting policy without getting too deep, I think. So the street lighting policy, it's developer driven. Developers reach out to our office, and they're the ones, they're the ones who request the street lights. Then we work with them, they set up an HOA. We set the agreement up so the HOA pays the annual invoice. So what this one is, this is a brand new development. This one's a little different though, because the developer did not reach out to us until very late in their process. So this one, while it's the same, it's a little different just because they I hate to put blame on the developer, but we do not seek out the developers if they want streetlights. They know that the city offers this as a program, so it's their duty to reach out to us. So that's kind of how this works. I would say 95% of the streetlight contracts, if not 100%, are developers working through the HOA. We rarely are getting established neighborhoods reaching out to us for decorative streetlights. I hope that helped out.
And a side note, just the way that this process works is that the developer is the HOA until typically 70 or 80% of the properties are sold, and then it's turned over to a separate body. City Manager.
Chair and Council, it sounds like maybe there's a spot that would work better where you've got the development community is asking to be able to move things along quicker when they're in the development process, which is where it came from. And what I'm hearing is that's not as big a concern on council when we're doing a new development, but bringing back the ones that are in an existing development so that people know what the process is if they want to have something changed. And I think that would be helpful on our part if we could, if that would be the council's desire for us to, when we're working with developers, that we go ahead and approve those under the existing guidelines, but anything new in existing neighborhood, we would bring back to council.
So essentially have a two-tier setup.
Correct.
And I think it would also be helpful if we maybe did an information item that we could point to, cut and paste as an information item to go out to the public, just so that people are aware that that policy exists if they want to.
And to Reed's point, if we have a bifurcated process like that, it's going to help those developers get in the process earlier if they know they can get it done through staff and get involved earlier in the process.
Okay, so does this need to go back for refinement? Or
We can bring you back something, but my sense is if the committee is, council as a whole, in reality, is comfortable with this, we can work on language to make it happen. We'll go back and look. If we need to bring you back language, we'll bring you back language.
So when this comes back to full council, we'll have a revised piece to vote.
We would bring it back through this committee first and then on to full council.
Yes.
But,
Councilmember Larson?
I don't see a reason to delay this particularly. I think we're all in favor of decorative lighting. The only question is this bifurcation that we're talking about. If we've got a developer proposing, which is more or less what we've got here, this is not going to impact the homeowners that are going to buy it. Whatever, it's already going to be in place, and so there's no real conflict that's going to arise from this. I assume everybody understands that they're going to pay a little extra for this decorative lighting. If it needs an upgrade, we've got to go to LEDs or something. They're going to be responsible for that upgrade. City will pay for the electricity on a standard basis. But other than that, it's going to be their show to maintain these poles. And as long as that's clear on the upfront, and when somebody approaches me about it, that's what I tell them. I tell them, you can get this done, but you're going to have to pay for the upgrade. You have to pay for the difference. And then it's going to be yours to maintain. And as long as they understand that, and it's their choice to do that, when they buy into a development that's already imposed on them, they know that when they're buying into it. And I think it's a matter of transparency and process that everybody needs to understand why somebody has something and somebody else doesn't have something. And if we can make that clearer and be transparent about the process, maybe, then I'd be perfectly happy with that. I'm happy with moving this forward, quite honestly.
And I appreciate that. I think from a staff standpoint, we want you to go ahead and move forward with this item.
Yes.
So we can get this done. Yeah. And then this will be for future ones that come back.
So the attorney was chomping at the bit to say that. So.
I have a clarification. On this CARF, it says Fishel Village is an existing residential development. Is it existing or is it still in development? Because I've heard two different things here, that you're dealing with the developer and not the HMO.
HOA.
Yes. So it's existing and it's under development. I'm not sure what the appropriate term is. So there's two phases. Phase one, in a perfect world, I'll say this, the developer reaches out to us early in the building process. This developer reached out about 3/4 of the way through phase one, and they're about to break ground on phase two. They were scrambling to get the lights in, and that's why this is in front of you today. And like I said, in a perfect world, they reach out before phase one is completed and the street lights are put in. So it's existing, still under development.
just for clarification, maybe we ought to say that phase one is existing and phase two is under development, just for clarity, because I'm thinking you've got an existing development that's requesting lights as opposed to a new development that's being developed.
Understood.
So that would be my concern. You need a motion?
Okay, so the committee is comfortable moving this item forward and coming back to further work on policy overall. Okay. Okay.
I move for approval.
Second.
All right. By voice vote, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? All right, thank you. That was more tortured than it needed to be. Sorry.
Does it have to be a voice vote for this?
I think we're doing voice just for consent.
Just for consent?
Oh, sorry.
Okay.
Yeah, that was consent. Okay. All right, on to the general agenda. Okay, we have G1.
Item G1, information on Connersville Road traffic study.
Mr. Fansler, if you would.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Mayor Pro Tem Adams. Good afternoon. Item before you is an update on the Kernersville Road Corridor Study. And I will not be presenting this, but I just want to take a moment to introduce Hunter Stazak. Hunter's a rock star, the Team Player Award recipient on the Employee Excellence Committee, and deserves all the credit for a really good job on this project. What you'll see here is the product of how the process is supposed to work. This is a planning study funded by our MPO, and we've hired one of our on-call consultants to deliver it. And so you hear from those MPO staff and then ultimately the consultant to give you the recommendations. But I think this is a good overview of how the process works and works well. I just wanted to highlight Hunter at this time. I'll let him introduce the item, and then he'll bring up our presenter. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman and members of the City Council and Public Works Committee. And thank you very much, Jeff, for the very kind introduction. We're here today to discuss the Kernersville Road Corridor Study. And before we turn things over to DRMP, the consultants on this particular study, I wanted to provide some brief context as to the Kernersville Road Study. So as you may be aware, this project originated as a request from our neighborhoods in the East Ward who observed Kernersville Road congestion as a major concern, including speeding, safety, and just general concerns about increased residential development along the corridor. So in response to that, the City of Winston-Salem Department of Transportation sought out funding through the Surface Transportation Block Grant Set-Aside program that the Winston-Salem Urban Area Metropolitan Planning Organization, or MPO, has. And through that special studies program, this study was selected for funding. And shortly after that, the City of Winston-Salem looked at its on-call contractors list and decided to consult with what the firm was called at the time was Ramey Kemp Associates, and they have since merged to become DRMP. The purpose of this study is to investigate all of those concerns that I outlined there, as well as to produce ultimately two different conceptual designs, which can be mixed and matched, and we can discuss a little bit of that today, in addition to opinions of probable cost, and a robust public input process was incorporated throughout the whole process. So with that, I'm very happy to introduce Mr. Andrew Eagle of DRMP, who will go over the Kernersville Road Corridor Study and its key findings.
Great.
Thank you
very much.
Thank you, Hunter. Good afternoon, everyone. Again, Andrew Eagle with the DRMP, the consultant on the corridor study here.
Good afternoon.
So, as Hunter said, kind of the precipitous of this corridor study was comments from residents concerned with safety, growth of traffic in the area, growth of development in the area, congestion in the area. We took kind of a two-pronged approach of this, of looking at it from a traffic engineering perspective and also taking in public engagement comments and concerns from local citizens. Here you see the study area of Kernersville Road. It starts at Reynolds Park Road on the west side and ends at Old Winston Road, about a 4-mile corridor. Half of that, 0.5 miles of that on the west end is more of a commercial area, and the remaining 3.5 miles is more residential in nature. And again, trying to do the kind of two-pronged approach with engineering and public involvement. We had 2 public meetings, and after each one took their comments along with data from the engineering side to produce the corridor study in several iterations. Here you see a picture of the public engagement meeting number 1. Residents were asked to fill out surveys. We had a meeting discussing the project area, gathering insight from them of where they saw the problem issues were, what possible solutions they were interested in seeing. And then we took that information along with all the data that we compiled, such as traffic volumes, speed data, crash data, developing actual traffic models and software of the intersections, combining all that into a draft corridor study. And then from the draft corridor study, we developed some conceptual designs of recommendations. We took the conceptual designs back to the public, let them look over what we had come up with based on their input and our input, got feedback and went back and revised some of the designs there. And then developed the final corridor study, which we also gave to NCDOT. Since Kernersville Road is a state-maintained road, we'll have to get their approval on anything. In the process, we also looked at some adopted plans and projects that were already funded or planned in the area. Some of them included recommendations for pedestrian and bicycle improvements, including the bicycle master plan recommending dedicated bike lanes in this area, and the pedestrian master plan recommending sidewalk on one side to connect the commercial area with the residential area. There's 2 roadway projects, the Northern Beltway, which is already under construction. It was a big concern to the local residents of what was going on there and how that was affecting traffic and what was that going to look like in the future. And then the other project, which is not funded yet, but under planning and design, is the Kernersville Road widening, and that kind of goes from roughly where the Northern Beltway would intersect around Sedge Garden Road towards the end of the project at Old Winston Road. That would be a 4-lane divided facility with bike lanes and sidewalks. So here's what we heard from the initial public engagement. Citizens were concerned with speeding, with traffic congestion, particularly at Linville Road and Sedge Garden Road, trying to turn left from those signals, which was already under construction with the Northern Beltway. So hopefully that should help eliminate some of those concerns there, but also just a lack of turn lanes along the corridor, which holds up traffic trying to go through. And then based on the data we obtained, there was some speeding on Kernersville Road that we noted, and also speeding on Old Winston Road in the area. We looked at turn lane warrants based on the traffic volumes we had, and looked at where it would be beneficial to add those left turn lanes or right turn lanes. There's several areas where you'll have a left turn lane at one intersection and it narrows back down, and then a while later you have another left turn lane. And we've recommended kind of trying to sort those areas out to just have one section through there, so you're not hourglassing the roadway. And then in the commercial area was another area of concern, with closely spaced driveways, many right beside each other or near signalized intersections. We identified this area as being a higher crash area due to just all the conflict points in that area. Public engagement meeting number 2, again, we presented the concepts there. We broke it up into a commercial area with a concept A and a B, and then the residential area with the concept A and B. From what we heard at that meeting, there's not a whole lot of desire for bike and pedestrian facilities in the area, but again, pointing back to approved plans and things in the past, it is recommended for this area for the future. Citizens would prefer wider shoulders instead of bike lanes to help with emergency vehicles and people being able to pull off on the side of the road. They did like the left turn lanes that we were recommending, but in some cases we're concerned if we did a 2-way left turn lane that would maybe lead to people trying to pass in the center lane. And then I'm just going to wrap this up with a couple slides of the conceptual designs. This is not the full set, but just to give you an idea of what things are looking like. This is the commercial area around Reynolds Park Road. Option A has sidewalk there in the red shading. That's only on the south side. And then option B has sidewalk on both sides and bike lanes in both directions, and a median, which helps to reduce the number of conflict points between vehicles and help safety in that area. And then in general, for the residential area, option A is really just looking at turn lanes where they can be added, where they're needed. Option B is going to more of that full cross section of adding turn lanes, bike lanes, and pedestrian facilities on both sides. And then lastly, I did mention there was some speeding on Old Winston Road. We looked at the potential to do what's a mini roundabout. So it stays within the existing right-of-way. It's a much smaller roundabout than what most people think. The middle island is traversable by larger vehicles, so they can get through. But it helps to slow traffic down along the roadway and not kind of getting rid of the straight shot where speeds can get a little bit higher. And with that, I'd like to thank you for your time today, and also thank staff. They've been really great to work with, so hope to see you again soon. I'll be glad to take any questions.
Yeah, hang around. We'll probably have a few questions for you. All right. Committee members, can I get thoughts or questions? Mayor Pro Tem.
Yes, I used to work out there at the Secor plant, and I would use different ways. Back in the day, that was in 95, 96, 97. I had my standard way to get to work, 311 to Ridgewood, make the turn. But occasionally I would go, if traffic was backed up, I would jump off and jump over to this road, coming home and going. That's one of those roads that's always been an issue all our life. We kind of used to call it High Point Road as well. And it's kind of like 109. People just fly, trucks, people, everything. And I applaud the citizens in that area for being proactive in seeing their neighborhood changing. Not getting angry or anything, but saying, you know what, people, we got an issue. Let's all get together and find a solution. And I think working with staff and your organization, that they are doing that. And I'm very happy with that.
Yeah, it was a great process working with the public. A lot of times you don't know what you're going to get in some of these public meetings. And
tell us that. We know.
Yeah. It was great, though. Great to work with everyone on this.
Council members, any questions or comments? Thoughts on A versus B? Councilmember Scipio.
Thank you. I'm glad to see what you've come up with your recommendation. The majority of this is in the East Ward. The only comment that I have is that it does not slow down traffic except at the Weevil Road. And there is still a straight shot from Walltown area all the way out. There's no traffic stopping. And the biggest concern was that when we have developments coming in this area, people complain that there's going to be so much congestion, and getting in and out of Kernersville Road onto Kernersville Road is a real problem. And I'm not so certain if this will resolve that, because it's still the traffic doesn't stop. There are no lights or any other roundabouts. I think there was in one of the renditions was another roundabout to sort of slow the traffic down. But that's my only concern. I don't think we're really addressing the break in the traffic when you come from Reynolds Park Road all the way out to Sedge Garden. It's still a straight shot for the more mature neighborhoods. And so that's my problem with that. But I know they didn't want sidewalks. Lord have mercy, they didn't want sidewalks. You're recommending at least one side. Because this is it was traditionally a rural area, farmland, and the people aren't walking right now. But as more development comes, we're going to have a need for that. So I'm happy you do have some sidewalks put in there.
If I can, just to add to your point with the speeding, that was something we considered in the study, looking at the side roads to see, is there a location where we could put a signal that would stop traffic and provide some platooning, some gaps in traffic for other areas. And with it being more of a residential area, you're going to get a lot of people leaving in the mornings on those side roads, but then the rest of the day, traffic on the side roads are going to be much lower. And NCDOT typically wants, a full 8 hours of one day meeting signal warrants before they'll put in a signal. We do have some discussion in the corridor study of other potential ways, such as increased law enforcement, obviously, for speeding, or maybe potentially doing some radar signs that flash the speed, or not the speed, but flash that they're speeding in certain areas that could be put in, could be included in either option.
Mr. Vance, have you had
Thank you, Andrew.
Point to make.
Just to, Councilmember Scipio, just to add a couple more comments to that. One thing that, we're having to closely coordinate as well is the DOT project with the Beltway. And so there'll be some changes to, as you're well aware, Kernersville Road to address some of these things. Now, you mentioned the fact that we didn't want, that we heard in some of our public meetings that sidewalk was, we kind of heard some pushback on some of that. Keep it in tune. Our pedestrian plan does call for sidewalk on one side, so we try to be somewhat consistent with that as well. What that will provide is a safe separation of traffic to allow some of the users of the sidewalk to have that a little bit safer choice to do that. Additionally, I wanted to mention, you heard talk about the signals that were considered. Looking at this and the need for them to be warranted, which is an FHWA requirement, and so while that is well intended, the amount of side street traffic is really hurting the ability to produce that. So all things considered, we're challenged with being able to stop them on Kernersville Road, but understanding that with the change to the Beltway and the introduction to how that will integrate with Kernersville Road, you'll see some of that going on. And also wanted to mention the two projects that are be submitted through prioritization, which is our MPO's call for funding for projects that are two of which are on Kernersville Road, and do have other measures to enhance some of that speeding, or control some of that speeding, and provide some of those additional safety measures, including carrying sidewalk out towards Kernersville. So all things being equal, the sidewalk, the bicycle lanes are consistent with our planning efforts. And the signal warrants are going to be something that we'll continue to monitor, because over time, if it's not warranted today, it can be warranted in the future. And then lastly, last comment I wanted to make is understanding that with option A and option B, and kind of what we're wanting to have some clarity on today, is really understanding, is there a preference given the fact that obviously there are some that could have a significant more cost factor moving forward. And so those are some of the discussions that I think we want to at least start the preliminary conversation today and give staff some guidance moving forward on how to handle that as we try to wrap this study up. So again, this is a presentation for information, but understanding our work still will continue in monitoring the corridor, understanding the growth, and then seeing how the Beltway normalizes once it's constructed, ultimately as we develop our long-range plan.
Further comment?
Please. And I had one further point of clarification with respect to the comment on traffic calming and how that appears to be absent in the conceptual designs that you see in front of you. As Mr. Eagle mentioned, there is a section in the Kernersville Road corridor story, which as information that will be published on our programs and studies page, or our plans and studies page on the Winston-Salem Department of Transportation website. But as part of that section, it recommends a suite of potential solutions, including the use of rumble strips, the use of the speed radar signs that he had mentioned, potentially narrowing lane widths at certain portions. But the reason we didn't get overly prescriptive was because we have to reach a level of consensus with NCDOT, North Carolina Department of Transportation Division 9, and they did not want us to get too prescriptive in what is a very preliminary stage of the project development process.
I've got a question. As this was modeled, what was used as sort of the basis as far as population growth? It seems to me that this is an area that is ripe for significant population growth and development. How is that? The fact that the current residents are not in favor of something, that, to me, that's sort of the thing we have to look at, is what the current residents want versus what the residents are going to want after after the population doubled, tripled, or quadrupled in however many years we're looking at this road being in service. And will those people want sidewalks and bike paths? So I'm just curious as to what level of population growth is anticipated in this corridor.
Yeah, I don't think I can give you any exact numbers off the top of my head, but just to give you an idea of the methodology we used, we took the traffic forecast that was completed for the Northern Beltway, but that was only for part of the corridor. We also looked at historical daily traffic volumes to develop a growth rate in the area. And combining those two, projecting traffic out to the year 2040 is our design year, our analysis year for traffic volumes. And also working with staff to identify approved developments that are not constructed yet that will also be adding traffic, so that's also included as well.
Mr. Franzler.
I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman and Councilman Recipient, one other comment I wanted to make, just to be transparent, is you heard us meshing the forecast with the Beltway. Also, the big part of the bulk of this project was coordinating that impact of that project with ours. So I have to give Andrew and his team a lot of credit for meshing the forecast with new forecasts to get ultimate corridor analysis. But I wanted to revisit your comment about traffic signals, because I was trying to get my map to pull up while I was up here earlier, and the Beltway is proposing 4 traffic signals on the corridor to help with some of that. Those speeds, breaking those up. So I just wanted to make sure that we're clear, and I was transparent the fact that, when we say we're incorporating the need for traffic signal and what's warranted, well, the Beltway is solving a lot of that problem with their forecast. That's part of this discussion. So I just wanted to make the comment.
And how far does that go down? I know it's up, the Beltway's up near Linville Road, Sedge Garden.
Sedge Garden and to Motsinger on the other end. So it's kind of that area, that whole area right through there.
Councilman Recipio, if I could offer just 2 comments, one for your question, one for Councilman McIntosh's. When you heard the conversation about, the warrants for the signals being, those warrants being met, and the issue is really that volume on those side streets. Right. When you look at kind of the larger area at a macro level, a lot of this area, as was pointed out earlier, was somewhat developed in sort of a large lot rural character before time. The development that has occurred in this area in more modern times has been developed under current UDO standards, which requires connectivity. So the good news is you've got a lot of connectivity in this area, which helps to, which is dispersing that traffic through the network rather than concentrating it at certain intersections. So I mean that's probably a little bit of the reason why you're not seeing some of those side streets with that large traffic volume like you would see on a Griffith Road, where there's only 2 ways in and out, or a Metal Art Drive where there's only 2 ways in and out. You've actually got a pretty good network of street connectivity in this area, which helps to disperse that traffic pretty well. To Councilor McIntosh's point, as far as the future growth in this area, there is a pretty good chunk of undeveloped land there. I would note that everything on the north side of Kernersville Road is in the Salem Lake Reservoir Protection Area, so there's going to be some impervious limitations on future development in that area. The south side is not subject to those same rules. So there is a little bit of a cap built in, at least on the north side, as far as future development.
Councilor Recipio.
Can you explain the difference? You want some feedback on option A versus B. Could you just let us know what we're looking at that makes it different? It looks like it's sidewalks and bike lanes on B.
Councilman Recipio, so reminder that we're looking at really 2 areas. We're calling it the commercial area, which is the Reynolds Park, kind of on the closer into town section, and additionally out towards Kernersville, you have the option, the residential area, which, so understand there's 2 kind of areas we're talking about. Both have option A and option B. Option A, for the commercial area, one thing I want to mention here, this one is full access. The point there, correct me if I'm wrong, Andrew, we're not limiting any of the businesses' full turning movements. Option B, notice the change there with that red shading in the center of the street. So highlighting that clearly, that's a major change for operational impacts there. This project will cost significantly more, but it is far safer from a turning pedestrian access. So that's the trade-off. You're going to have access restrictions to your businesses at the benefit of reduction in conflicts. So that's a discussion point there, but with a higher price tag. And understanding there's a lot to digest there. Yes, ma'am.
But the red are sidewalks.
On the north and south side of the street there in this plan view, but the middle there is a median.
It's a median.
That's correct.
Okay, just one.
I guess technically, the red represents concrete, so concrete sidewalk, concrete.
Okay.
Yeah, and then moving toward the residential, you see the common turn lane there, which is that center turn lane. Trying to limit some of the weaving of opening and closing of different turn lanes out through there. And then option B is the sidewalk, and this is the bicycle and pedestrian improvement. This is a much more impact to properties, but does provide the safe separation for that foot traffic and that other mode of transportation. So those are the 2 kind of, when we're trying to lay those out, option A, option B for both commercial and residential, and just trying to, and we can mix match, understanding that anytime you see more red and more curb and gutter and those storm drain systems, the price tag will be going up. But these are as consistent as we can be with our planning documents and allowing the differentiation between the 2 areas. I hope that answers your question.
But on this option B, it's still a two-lane road except when you get to like a major development like Vernon Farms Boulevard, and it becomes the turn lanes, right? It's not 3 lanes on this visual. It's just 2 lanes, right?
So option B would be a 3-lane section.
Option,
Option B would be a 3-lane section.
a 3-lane road.
Yep.
Oh, okay.
So one lane in each direction and a center
Turn lane.
turn lane.
Option A is not that?
Option A is not. Again, this isn't showing the full corridor, but we selected areas where it was going from a 2-lane section and widening out for a turn lane and then going back down to 2 lanes. So we tried to just normalize that in certain areas, but there are going to be areas in this option A that would just be a 2-lane roadway still, where you know, some of the side streets that were lower volume weren't warranting the need for left turn lanes, so we left those as 2-lane.
Mr. Chairman, if I could offer this, if it's okay with the manager's office, would it be helpful if we provided a roll plot that showed the entire corridor, both option A and option B? I think I'm sensing there may be a little bit of confusion of the sections of options A that will remain 2-lane and the sections in option A, which you see here, which appear to be 3-lane. So maybe we can provide that clarity with a full corridor. It's challenging with the Beltway with the other proposed projects, and I mean this project, I mean these maps can be pretty, trying for the interest of this presentation to consolidate that, but it sounds like we may produce that, and I'm happy to do that.
Sure. Without being held to a number, what's the magnitude of the difference of cost?
Do we know preliminary estimates?
Massive? A lot? It's pretty technical.
I'm doing this off of memory as well, and I can pull it up here on my phone, but I believe the commercial area, option A was 3 million and option B was 4 million. You have those numbers?
Yes, I do.
Was I right on?
Very close. So the price tag on option A, and again, this is for the commercial area, $3,090,000, and option B, higher price tag, $4,170,000. Moving on to residential area, residential option A is on the screen right now, and that has a lower price tag of $730,000. That really only adds a westbound left turn lane on Kernersville Road at Robbins Road, adds a westbound right turn lane on Kernersville Road at Old Winston Road, and overall minimal right-of-way and utility costs are expected on that one. Option B is where you get into the addition of sidewalks and bike lanes that we've been talking about, as well as adding a center 2-way left turn lane from High Sedge Drive / Calvin Road to Motzinger and Linville. What that would do is that would bring the cost of option B in the residential area up to $10.12 million. The price tag on the third item, which is the Old Winston Road roundabout, for your information, the opinion of probable cost was $310,000.
Okay, that makes a difference.
Who pays for this? Because it is a state road?
So, Councilmember Scipio, this will be certainly, we want to get this in front of you, and if move forward, then there's a couple funding options. So this will be a future call for project. This scale, likely running it through our MPO and some local input. So it's going to be a federally funded capital improvement type scale project, not something that we'll be funding locally, but we'd have to fight for other competing projects.
And there was a mention of the expansion, the widening of Kernersville Road project. And when is the timing on that?
Sure. So that project is U6077 in the STIP, and that is to widen Kernersville Road to a 4-lane section divided with bike lanes and sidewalks on both sides, just to get everyone on the same page. That has been submitted through Prioritization 7, which is the process by which the State Department of Transportation develops the State Transportation Improvement Program. One of those sections, it's been divided into 2 sections, one from Sedge Garden to Hastings Hill, and one from Hastings Hill on to the commercial center in Kernersville, town of Kernersville. That has been submitted, one part Division 9 and one part by the Winston-Salem Urban Area MPO. We would expect to hear back on where that project ranks in the prioritization process by 2025. So got a ways to go on that one, and that one would be funded in the Division Needs Projects category if it were to be selected.
But that is only widening from Sedge Garden up to Kernersville, but
Correct.
not down to Walltown. So it really doesn't affect us very much. So this is just the part that will be affected for us. Okay.
Correct, yep.
Okay, anybody want to offer opinion on A versus B on the two sections? We've got the commercial, A or B, and then we got residential, A or B. Councilor Larson?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Well, first of all, this is a lot of work. It's a heck of a highway. I've traveled this several times and I sort of know the traffic patterns on it. I think that we have to consider that in the long run what it is we want. And I know that sidewalks are the most difficult thing to put in after we've finished the road. You wait for decades to get some of these roads to have sidewalks on them. We know this area is going to be developed. There's land available on the north side particularly, and even on the south side. Looks like into residential and perhaps even some commercial land developed on here. I think we could say, well, let's wait till that development occurs and make them do the sidewalks. But I don't know that that's going to really be a good policy. I think if we can only do A and get sidewalks on one side, certainly think we should do that at a minimum. But if we can possibly figure out a way to get sidewalks on both sides, I think it's going to be something that's going to be of lasting value to us. It's going to up the ante quite a lot. It's going to give some development potential in the area. And I think generally we'll be better served over the long run for that. It's just going to cost us more in the front end to do that. Can I assume that this is our responsibility, not Kernersville, to do any of this work?
So it would be North Carolina Department of Transportation project, and within this study area, this is City of Winston-Salem limits only, correct?
All of what you're showing me today is all Winston-Salem's. It's in our city limits.
Correct.
One thing we do know is that Kernersville area and the western part of the eastern part of our city is growing, and I think if we can make this an enhancement and an attractive place to come and invest, we're probably well doing that as well. So I think I'm in favor of generally in B if we can figure out how to pay for it. Obviously, that's going to be the killer right there, but if we don't sell ourselves short, if we're to find a way to get the state to support us on this, then we should jump on that, because I think in the long run, everybody's going to really appreciate that work, that extra work.
Councilmember Scipio.
Thank you. I like residential B because it speaks more of the future that's coming in that area. And I was at the public engagement area, and the people who typically come to those are around my age, and they're not planning to be out walking. But we have to know that in 30 years, we're going to have a lot of families out there with kids. The schools are there, and they're almost at capacity now, so I could see more growth with the schools that are in that area. But for the commercial area, the problem I have with option B is the median that would change the access to those businesses along that part of the road. I like the sidewalks. I just don't like the medium that would restrict access. It's very congested now, but I don't believe we've had, and I guess this is the thing that I would want to know, is what's our accident rate in that commercial area currently? Because you can just, turn on either side of the road. And I don't know if we've had a significant accident rate up there that dictates having those medians.
Indeed, the safety concerns on the what would be the western part of the corridor around Wautown and that commercial area that you see there, that was rated as the biggest safety issue along the corridor. And Mr. Eagle has some extra information that he can provide on that.
Mr. Chairman, can I add one? There's really no way to get across this road safely. There's no pedestrian crossings.
Just at the street.
You get all the way into the ends of the major intersections. I think it's something to think about. It may involve part of your traffic calming strategy. But I think as we look at this area developing and we think about how to get from one side to the other, pedestrian and bicycle riders, we don't really have an option to do that here too well. So again, it's not an argument for sidewalks on both sides of the street, obviously, if we're looking for an argument to do that.
Councilmember Burke.
Thank you. Thank you for this presentation. You all really put a lot into it, so much that my head is swimming. But I lived in this area for many years, so I can tell you firsthand, with the increased residents, this is an increased residential area. Therefore, the volume of traffic, it has continued to grow. And at different times during the day, it's very difficult to move and not just be still trying to get up and down Kernersville Road. When I look at option A, there's really not a lot that will change, that will improve the situation that will continue to grow and be an issue. And I'm also concerned about the commercial area. That is a very busy area right there. And I think that to close off access to the businesses will make it more difficult for people to go in and out of these to these businesses and do and I think we need to think about changing that up. You did a lot of work. I just don't see A or B being exactly what needs to be done. So some tweaks need to occur, definitely down in the area, the commercial area. And if we're thinking about A, I think the residents in the meeting, they did say that they don't want the sidewalks, they don't want the bike lane, but they did ask for wider let me see what
Shoulders.
Say it again.
The shoulders of the road, wider shoulders.
Wider shoulders. And I don't know why they didn't ask for 2 lanes all the way up and down on both sides, in addition to that left turn, the left turn lanes in the locations where they're definitely needed. So.
Let me start off by asking how much of a difference does it make with this project being accepted by NCDOT based on cost? So if one is significantly higher, does that lessen our chances of actually getting this done, or does it affect the time frame in which it's done?
I think it depends on how much funding is available in the division needs bucket at any given time in the development of the State Transportation Improvement Program, and that number is always changing. The lower cost projects may score a little bit better in prioritization because there is a benefit to cost ratio. So the lower cost solutions tend to score higher in prioritization, and that tends to lend itself better to getting a better score that ultimately gets programmed in the STIP. But it would also take the addition of local input points from the members of our TAC towards a hypothetical Kernersville Road project to really get programmed in the STIP. Hope that answers the question.
It does. In the commercial area, option A or B, actually in B, are there any thoughts or plans to change access and cross-access easement to take care of some of the concerns about not being able to get in and out of these larger projects as easily? I don't see anything on here, so I'm assuming the answer is no.
Yeah, just to dig into the details of the commercial area a little bit further. Option A, I don't know if this has a pointer on there. Well, maybe it won't help anyway. Y'all aren't facing it. On the north side, there's 3 driveways, the All Good Insurance, the AutoZone, and the Wendy's. that we are recommending as part of option A, just to close those driveways down. Those parcels have access on the back of the parcels and can get around to have other access other ways. It helps to kind of reduce the number of conflict points there, and also gets those driveways, removes those from what we call the functional area of the signalized intersection. When traffic is backed up at the stop bar, you're not going to be able to get in and out of those driveways anyway. On the south side, we couldn't do that. You see a couple intersections right there at Reynolds Park Road, the laundromat, the El Rey, and Little Caesars. There's no way to get vehicles to get from the back of the property to the front. There's like maybe one lane wide where you can get through the buildings. But we did reduce those to just being right in, right out at the intersection there, just to try to help with some of the conflicts in the area. And then
What is the yellow color?
that's new pavement. So it's not paved currently. The orange would be existing pavement. And I will add, we haven't really touched on this, High Point Road as part of option A. Right now there's like a free-flowing right that turns from Wildtown Street onto High Point Road. And that's located right across the street from the driveway for Southeast Plaza. So you've got vehicles trying to turn multiple different directions there. Just trying to clean up the area as best we could without impacting as many businesses. We chose to get rid of that right turn movement and have everyone use the signal at High Point Road instead. And also, this has a little bit of connectivity that we're adding between Little Caesars and the La Fiesta ice cream shop, that area over there, just to try to help people have other ways of getting in and out. Option B does take this further as far as trying to reduce the number of driveways or conflict points, really. It's really the same right in, right outs that I spoke about before, and the same driveway closures, but this one adds in the concrete median, which makes everything right in, right out. Gets rid of a lot of the left turns, or all the left turns in this area. If you'll notice at Reynolds Park Road, going westbound, there's a little turn path vehicle that's showing you can make a U-turn at that location. So if you are coming out of Southeast Plaza, you want to go towards Kernersville, you turn right and make a U-turn at the light at Reynolds Park. It's not shown on here, but we do have the same similar situation. I don't think we have that. I don't have a slide of it, but at Nicholson Road, in option B, we're recommending realigning High Point Road with Nicholson Road, creating a new signalized intersection there, and that's where the U-turn in the other direction would occur. But again, this takes in a lot more right-of-way to accomplish.
So this is my issue. If I'm at Rancho's Family Restaurant, I can only make a right turn out onto Kernersville Road?
Correct.
So when do I make the U-turn to go back to Reynolds Park Road?
At Nicholson Road, where there will be
Way
a signal.
down and come back?
Yep.
Oh. Okay.
Okay, let me finish my thoughts here, and then we'll move on. We're getting pretty deep. But this section functions not well now.
Yeah, let me touch on that a little bit. We did find from the crash history, the severity index, how often are really bad accidents occurring. This was higher than the statewide average. This section here from Reynolds Park to roughly Nicholson Road. I think that statewide was 3.7 severity index, and this was 3.94, if I'm doing that from my head. So.
Right, so my comments go to the ability to turn left as you're heading towards Kernersville east is not good now. It's going to get worse with population increase. So to me, adding the median in the middle just makes sense from a safety standpoint. It prevents people from doing that. It'll cause some other problems around the area, but to me, that I like that idea just from a traffic safety standpoint.
Yeah, it is a balance between safety, traffic operations, access to businesses and their livelihood. So it's a balance between all of that.
So my preference is in the commercial area is B. My preference I'm struggling with the residential area. Option B to me makes perfect sense from a long-range pedestrian bike ped standpoint. My question is whether that stretch of road will ever be pedestrian and bike friendly. I mean, to me, it's Peters Creek Parkway, right? And I just don't know that it will ever. I think you'll have more activity within those neighborhoods, pedestrian, but out on that stretch with the traffic levels that we're talking about, I get a real hard time figuring that that's ever going to be real friendly, plus the increase in cost on that. And I guess a lot of that depends on how effectively we can reduce speeds on that. I know for one thing, if you put up those little radar signs that shows the numbers, you get teenagers coming along, see how big those numbers get.
It's funny you mentioned that. That's actually in our study that there's two kinds. There's one that flashes the speed, and there's one that just says you're speeding.
Right.
And doesn't show the speed, so it's
The
not,
ones
it's
that
not
put
a
the actual
challenge.
numbers up are just an invitation. Okay. All right. So we've given you four different opinions. Is that enough to go on from, or do you want?
Let us work with that, Chair McIntosh, because I think at the end of the day, what Hunter mentioned is right. When it's time to finalize this and go for a call for projects and prioritization, let the staff and DOT kind of analyze this and see which one is looking like the best option for getting funded. I think that's ultimately what we're trying to find, some way to better the community. I think staff's got what they need to go back and work with NCDOT staff to try to make this come to fruition.
So we beat this one enough.
Yes.
One more question.
One more
question.
Yes, ma'am.
Is it possible to do residential A, option A, which is just changing lines and stripes fairly soon?
Probably not with the backlog of projects we've currently got on the books. I wouldn't expect it anytime soon.
Okay.
Mayor Pro Tem.
Yes, I just forwarded ACM King email from Carolina Ford about Charlotte and their roads and highways and transportation issues. Again, the world we live in right now, everybody is just not going to get it the way they want it, y'all. And what we do, our job is to stand in the gap and try to make it as best we can where everybody can see a bigger picture of possibilities. Charlotte, they knew density was coming. Unfortunately, they waited too late. Right now, they're asking for trillions of dollars from the General Assembly. Their bus ridership is down. Everybody think people riding buses in Charlotte. It's way down. Their transit line is kind of stuck right now, the light rail, the gold, the red. But the main problem they see is people want these things to move fast, but they want them to move according to what they want. And our job is, again, to look at the big picture. So I know that people, citizens, residents, right now, everybody is mad about something they don't like. And transportation and roads and density and housing is one of them. So this area of town, because the Beltway was started on that end, we knew the density was coming before the Beltway would even be finished, Charlotte, Atlanta scenario. I applaud staff and I applaud the community that you're working with and the council member that you still got to do what we got to do for safety. What are you going to do? I mean, we build it, and they'll come. They'll get over it. All of us ease into change. It's just that we're old and we don't like change. But if we build it and it's done, it'll be okay. If they don't like going down Colonelsville Road, if you're from the area, you'll find 5, 10 different ways to get to work. You just got to leave 30 minutes early. You're living in Charlotte right now on the edges. But I applauded Chair McIntosh, the effort. And I say, like South Carolina's DOT, let them work. Go to work. Get it done.
All right. On that note, may we have item G2, please?
Item G2, update on Winston-Salem Department of Transportation capital projects.
Thank you, Mr. Fensler.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, I promise that we'll not have any more round robin. It'll just be me, so you can refocus it. But I'll run through our brief update. Several months ago, we were, before this body, we presented a lot of our status updates. And you'll see today, I'm happy to share that we have shown progress. I'll take a plug just to say thanks to this committee for allowing us the time to hire the right folks. I represent a great team, and my team has done tremendous work, and I think you'll see some of that on the reflection of the progress we've made. And I just wanted to say thank you.
Congratulations on those efforts, by the way.
No, thank you, and it's to them, so thank you much. We'll start with a strollway. This project has Phase one, we broke this project up into two phases, largely because the original phase we completed under budget. So we saw the opportunity. You probably remember we brought this previously. I'll highlight what we're going to be doing is a phase two, which will be adding additional sidewalk, pedestrian signals. And the schedule here, we actually start the traffic signal construction at 2 intersections next month. We are procuring the materials now. We've hired 2 new traffic signal technicians, and we made the determination in-house that this will be a great training opportunity for our team. So we'll be building these improvements starting next month, and then the actual construction of the sidewalk pieces there shown by red and green will be a little bit later this spring as we wrap up those bid documents and work towards that construction bidding. The next project I'll highlight is the Polo Road Improvement Project. This is phase 2. Several years ago through the 2014 bonds, we did phase 1. This is a 2018 funded bond project to do phase 2 from essentially University Parkway over to Wake Drive. Sidewalk, curb and gutter, there's a lot of geometry changes. There's about 1,900 foot of center median. We talked about medians and how they restrict access for safety. That's included with this. There's pedestrian refuge crossing. This is the works. This project has been advertised. Unfortunately, it was unsuccessful its first iteration. You see the note on the screen there about we opened bids February 15th because we did extend that deadline to encourage additional bidders, and from our communication with our purchasing department, it sounds like we will have some folks that are interested. We're hopeful that into this week we'll be opening competitive bids, and we'll be bringing forward some items to you in the subsequent meetings to award that contract. So that project is funded, it is designed, it has been put out for bid, and we're hopeful that we'll be opening those bids into this week. The First and Second Street two-way conversion project, I'm happy to say, has been completed. We all made it through that painstaking tear of everything downtown right outside this building last year. I thought this was a cool kind of side-by-side showing the changes just from a few years of how our city is developing. Notice that you can now you can circle this whole block of that First, Second, Peters Creek, Broad Street in all directions. That has never been like this been done. So we're happy to see the growth and the changes and providing that circular and transportation options to navigate this whole area. So just a cool side-by-side to show how our benefits are providing mobility options in this area. The Liberty Main, you guys remember these barricades we saw all over the place for the First and Second Street project. Well, here they come again, because we've started the Liberty Main project. And so if you recall, Duke Energy does own and maintain the traffic signal equipment downtown. So that's another nuance our department has to deal with. But the result is if they get knocked over or maintaining them, they have to do that maintenance. So that's the benefit to the city. But what you'll see now is we've done the contract work with Duke Energy, and they've started work to dig the foundations. These are 10, 12 feet down the ground, 54 inches wide. And there's a lot of these foundation and conduit work that has to be the preliminary work to receive the traffic signals, which is the single biggest component of the project by far. So just to highlight the project, it is an end-to-end conversion. When I say end-to-end, it's basically Brookstown, even down in towards the Old Salem Road, all the way out towards MLK. So Liberty and Main are a north-south pair, but just from the size, we've oriented it east-west here just for graphical. But and hopefully your screen is more resolution better than this. But it will be. You'll see double yellow center line through the entire route as we change Liberty Main end-to-end to 2 ways. But start with the traffic signal work that is currently under construction. Business corridor enhancements, another 2018 bond-funded project. You'll notice that and you'll see in your Finance Committee a little bit later, this item here for all of these streetlights, which is the largest component of this project with the corridor enhancements, will be to include the lighting on the bridges. So for a long time now, you've been questioning and asking where are the streetlights for all the new bridges that were built, where here they are. And just want to make one thing you've heard today recurring is our effort to align our planning efforts and make good on that. So the streetlight you see there was the exact streetlight that was recommended in the Downtown Streetscape Master Plan that was adopted by this body through City Council. So we're showing some consistency there, and we'll be procuring those streetlights upon the action that that we'll receive hopefully at the Finance Committee and City Council this month. Let's talk about the MUP. We presented on this last month, and we're thankful that the first committee meeting, the first meeting of council in February, you guys did award that contract to Smith Rowe. And so we will be letting those, we'll be executing those contracts in the next month or so and getting our construction inspection firm on board. And we're looking for a notice to proceed sometime in April to actually start putting boots on the ground and building the MUP East and make good on what you see here in the photo, providing that connectivity for that multi-use path. The western section is in design. If you recall my presentation last month, we talked about its 2 phases, the west and the east. East is what is, of course, been awarded. West is under design, which will carry the multi-use path from 4th Street, West 4th Street out towards Laughlin, providing essentially that connection to the hospital, from the strollway to the hospital for those two. So we'll continue those design efforts now. Our team is managing a design consultant to help with the design of that project. Very challenging, a couple bridges, some culvert crossings, et cetera, for that western piece. Again, just highlighting those 2 segments all the way out to the hospital. Let's talk a little bit about our RAISE grant application and award. This is the Long Branch Trail. Happy to say that we've executed our agreement with NCDOT, which is a requirement to, since they handle the pass-through of the funds through FHWA, and we've requested authorization. So there's a lot of nuance when we deal with these type of funding, that we have to do agreements and then request to spend the money, and we have made that request. We actually had a meeting today with NCDOT reminding them to go in and review this and give us our determination so we can proceed with hiring our design consultant. And you see that our design, we're moving forward with, hopefully if everything aligns the next couple months, we'll be issuing that design contract in the spring so we can get to work on the Long Branch Trail extension, basically from MLK up to 25th Street. Wanted to take a minute to talk about the capital improvement project that was funded in last year's budget cycle. This is an enhancement for Fire Station 10. This was the first of its kind in our city. It's called a Q cutter. This will allow a break in traffic to allow Fire Station 10, which has tremendous access or egress issues at Jonestown and Country Club. You can obviously understand with being that close to the traffic signal, with the standing queue of the signal, there's often challenges with the fire equipment and apparatuses getting out of the station. So this is an enhancement that will essentially break traffic, providing a gap, and they'll be preempted where they can clear the queue, releasing that blockage and allow safe and clear access, egress for the apparatus. The priority pedestrian projects, wanted to highlight these. These are spot intersection improvements. These date back to 2019 when we brought an item through this body with a long list of targeted intersection improvements for pedestrian-specific treatments. And we have completed 34 of those since then. So a tremendous amount of work, tremendous amount of staff time, and a tremendous benefit to our community. The last one we just completed was the intersection of Indiana and Deschler there in the Piney Grove community, and those treatments are working well there. The next 3 that are slated, and we have issued a work order for. Actually, we met the contractor on site today for work to begin today and tomorrow at University and Long, and you see the next 3 that'll be in queue. As I mentioned, we've already issued those work orders. These are for crossing accommodations, pedestrian signals. Some of these include some curb ramps, adjustments, just the gamut to improve the walkability, particularly crossing some of our major thoroughfares. Just a quick couple side-by-sides of the work there we're talking about. These are the type scale projects that we're doing with the sidewalk, the mid-block refuge crossing with the signing cluster there to accommodate the improvements, and of course the ADA accommodations to allow any type of wheelchair access via the curb there. With that, those are...
Is that all?
I think that's it. Thought there was one more, but I guess I'm mistaken. So I'm happy to answer any questions. Normally I have a summary slide or a question slide, so that's what threw me off guard.
Yes, thank you, Chair McIntosh. Mr. Fansler and your team, thank you so much, ACM King, for getting this project done on Indiana Avenue. I live over there. My family lives over there. We've been there for decades. I know the people in this community. Again, this goes back to even like Weaver Fire. This was rural country out here. We said we were going to Piney Grove when we lived in the city. People knew you were going to the country, you know. So this particular thing, there were a lot of neighborhood meetings, engagement, you know that. And this was one of the main things they always asked for. They never really asked for anything. But what happened, like we're seeing, people coming through Piney Grove doing 60, 70 miles an hour on a 35 miles per hour street. It used to be 25, and the street is narrow. It's very narrow. So what I've heard, and I said I would tell you when you present it, over the past few weeks, I've gotten several calls from constituents that live on this street. I've heard from their leader, Sabrina, and others. They are thoroughly happy with this. They say that they can sit on their porch for like on the next 3 or 4 days, and they can see people starting to slow down when they get to the curve towards Cherry Street. And they just want to thank you and your team and everybody so much. This one was a win-win here. Thank you.
Thank you.
Comments, questions? Councilmember Larson.
Maybe this doesn't apply to what you're doing now, but what is the status of the old Salisbury Road Bridge that we've been working on now for 3 years?
Councilmember Larson, so we have awarded that contract, and we're getting ready to start that probably in April of this year, so that should be moving forward.
Do we have an estimated time? How long will it take, do you think?
Probably about 8 to 9 months.
9 months? Yeah. Okay. Thank you very much.
From Mayor Pro Tem's comments, I mean, I think it's very apparent that these are projects that really impact people's lives and perception of the communities that they live in. And so the feedback you get from these, I think, typically is always very positive. Thank you. I know it's a lot of work. These things have to be really, every detail has to be thought out and done properly. So thank you guys for what you're doing. Appreciate it. If there's nothing else, for the good of the order,
Thank you.
we're adjourned.